a college student builds a machine that summons ghosts. In a peaceful and quiet town, Ethan Lightman helps his father Richard by fixing his stereo. Sitting with the rest of his family for dinner, Ethan says that he's going to leave soon to perform an experiment in his college lab. His parents and siblings, especially young Becca, are disappointed in hearing this. John speaks privately with Ethan and complains that they haven't seen him in months. Ethan can't stay and says that he needs to do this experiment. He wishes everyone good night and leaves. Meeting with two of his fellow students, Hannah and Adnan, Ethan sneaks into the lab and quickly sets up his gear. Adnan records the whole process, where Ethan reveals his latest invention called ELI, short for electromagnetic induction. His goal with this machine is to establish wireless electricity in every home within a decade, most likely for the benefit of not having to charge a smartphone with a plug all the time. The machine turns on, and Ethan watches in anticipation. Nothing happens, however, and Ethan turns up the power to achieve the desired result, when all of a sudden, black smoke appears whirling inside the light bulb that is meant to produce light wirelessly moments before the power goes off. Knowing that they're going to be in trouble if they stay in the lab, the three students take their equipment and run away. They manage to escape in time. The next day, Ethan tries to figure out what has happened. Hannah, who also happens to be his girlfriend, tells him not to obsess over it. Soon afterwards, Matt calls Ethan and informs him that their parents are dead, killed in a tragic accident after being hit by a truck. 3 months later, Ethan, as the older sibling of the family, struggles to keep things together, caring for Matt and Becca. Ethan receives a package at work and learns of Becca's difficulty interacting with other children. Ethan doesn't have time for this, as his hands are full, and takes his siblings back home. While picking up the mail, Ethan talks with a neighbour named Tom, who consoles him. Becca asks Ethan about his conversation with Miss Nash, her teacher, and tells him to be nice to her. Later that night, Ethan leaves the mysterious box in the garage and seems to be having second thoughts about it. The next day, Ethan drops off Becca and Matt and returns home early from work. Intimidated by the dirty dishes in the sink, Ethan goes to the garage and opens the box. He takes out a piece of equipment that is part of the ELI machine. Having abandoned the project for some time, Ethan decides to dive back in again, putting together the machine. In the meantime, Matt takes Becca to her swimming lesson. Back at home, Ethan runs the machine, but something ominous seems to be brewing around him. Threads of black smoke seem to float behind him before ELI overheats and shuts down. Ethan then realizes he's forgotten to pick up Matt and Becca. He apologizes to them, and to make up, he prepares dinner with Becca. Matt sees Eli and is furious at Ethan for working on that machine again. He accuses Matt of their parents' death because he wasn't there on that fateful day. Ethan stands up for his machine, saying that one day it will change everyone's lives. Matt goes to his room, but shortly after, he sneaks to his parents' bedroom. Becca is alone in the bathtub, practicing holding her breath. Marie, a friendly neighbour, comes by to have a chat with Ethan. Matt senses something in the room, and Ethan hears Becca calling out to him. Going to the bathroom, Ethan hears Becca accusing Matt of spying on her. Matt denies everything and leaves. Ethan reads Becca a bedtime story, and when she falls asleep, he returns to the lab for another test with Eli. In the morning, Becca wonders who changed the calendar, as she is the only one allowed to do it. No answer there. Later on, Becca asks to see Eli. Ethan agrees and tells her about the wireless electricity. Becca is fascinated, and with Ethan's guidance, she turns it on. Matt is watching silently. A few moments later, Ethan hears a voicemail left by Hannah, and Matt sits looking at one of his parents' photographs, when all of a sudden, he notices in the mirror a message appearing out of nowhere in the wall behind him. He's startled and turns around, but there is nothing there. Matt is shaken, and then he hears Becca talking to someone under the bed. Matt asks her about it, and Becca says that she's kind of play-talking to their mother. The next day, Ethan oversleeps, and Matt wakes him up. The calendar has been changed again, but Becca hasn't even woken up yet. After dropping Becca at school, Matt confides in Ethan about his recent experience. He mentions that he saw their mother and father in their room. Thinking his brother might take him for just being over-imaginative, Matt tries to strengthen his claim by pointing out to the weird things that are happening in their house, such as the eerie situations and the calendar changing on its own. He also says that Eli is probably sending out a signal and that Mom and Dad may be trying to communicate with them. Hearing all these claims, Ethan's only reply is for Matt to go to school. Ethan isn't keen to believe any of this and carries on with his business. He notices, however, that his father's toolbox has miraculously returned back to the garage from the basement. Becca says that she's not scared anymore and wants to sleep in her bedroom. Ethan argues with Matt about making Becca believe in ghosts, but Becca interrupts them and says that Mom and Dad don't like it when they fight. Suddenly, the stereo turns on and the siblings freak out, but then rejoice when they listen to their father's favorite music track. Ethan goes to the garage and sees Eli operating steadily now. Looking on the internet about paranormal activities, Ethan tries a little test. He runs Eli and watches in awe as the shadow of the toolbox is slowly returning to the garage. The machine though gets overheated and shuts down, causing the toolbox to fall to the floor. The next morning, Ethan meets up with Hannah and talks to her about Eli. He correlates the paranormal activity with electromagnetic pulses of some sort. He ends up saying that there is something weird going on in his house. Hannah implies that Ethan may not be mentally well, at which he gets irritated and leaves. Meanwhile, Matt and Becca turn the machine on. Ethan comes home and sees the two kids playing with an invisible spectre that is holding Becca's favorite doll in mid-air. Becca promises not to turn the machine on and tells Ethan that Mom has asked them to get the signal stronger. Ethan talks with Matt and decides to contact their parents. He asks Tom for a way to strengthen the signal. Matt learns that Mom and Dad will only talk to Becca. Tom gives Ethan enough power for Eli to operate without overheating issues. The next day, Ethan and Becca shop for parts for the machine. Matt invites his friend, Dag, over and tells him about his parents coming back through the machine. All the lights are off in order to save energy. Ethan calls for Becca to come and see the machine, but the girl is practicing holding her breath in the bathtub. Ethan operates the machine alone. Suddenly, an unseen force holds Becca under the water. The little girl struggles and manages to get out alive. Later on, Ethan checks up on his sister. Dag, who is hanging out with Matt, goes to the bathroom to wash his hands. The boy sees a woman's shadow in the bathtub and gets spooked. He pulls the curtain, but there's nothing there. Leaving the bathroom, however, he turns around, and then the female shadow materializes and starts following him. Dag gets so scared he leaves the house and rides his bicycle away as fast as he can. Matt calls out to his friend, but Dag has already fled. In the morning, Matt sees Tom is staring at him. Tom goes to Ethan and asks him about the machine. He says that he has seen his wife. Ethan goes to Tom's house and learns that Tom's wife, Karen, took her own life there. Ethan returns to his house and turns off the machine. He learns about Becca's imaginary friend named Alice living in their house. He asks his sister about Alice, and Becca says that Alice came to the house right after Ethan turned on the machine for the first time. Alice hides most of the time, being afraid of another unseen figure named Henry. Hannah comes over and shows Ethan a video of the day of their experiment. A shadow is seen appearing behind them that night, and Ethan deducts that that was the moment when everything started. Hannah expresses her doubts about ghosts appearing and mentions that they could be echoes. Ethan disagrees and brings up Becca's imaginary friend, Alice. He decides to go to Marie and asks her about the previous owners of the house. Ethan asks if Marie knew anyone named Alice living there, and Marie mentions that Alice was the foster child of the Giffords. One day, Alice went missing, and Mr. Gifford was accused of doing something to her. The girl was never found. Mr. Gifford's first name was Henry. In the meantime, Becca is lured to the basement by one of the apparitions holding her favorite doll. She searches for it and eventually finds it inside of a large box. Unexpectedly, Becca is thrown inside the box, which closes, and she starts screaming. Matt goes to her and gets scared by the female shadow in the basement. Ethan and Hannah come and, together with Matt, they search for their sister. Becca opens the box and gets out. Ethan goes to the garage and sees that the machine is not there. Matt and Hannah hear Becca's voice from behind the wall. At the same time, Tom sees another female shadow appearing in the attic and bursts into tears, thinking it is his dead wife. Ethan tries to break into his house. Suddenly, an eerie dark hand grabs Becca. Matt and Hannah discover a secret door and behind it an underground tunnel. Matt goes in, but the door closes, separating him from Hannah. Matt crawls in the tunnel. Ethan, holding a baseball bat, climbs the stairs to Tom's attic. Matt finds Becca standing in the corner of a dim room. He touches her and sees a dark hand covering her mouth. Hands reach out and grab Matt as well. Ethan finds his machine, but Tom gets in his way. The two of them fight. Becca and Matt are pinned to the wall. Henry is holding them there. Hannah manages to open the secret door again. An evil shadow starts to shape now. Hannah is also caught by dark hands inside the tunnel. The evil shadow floats menacingly towards Becca and Matt. Ethan is overpowered by Tom, who tries to talk him out of his madness. Becca loses consciousness. Ethan screams that the shadows are going to kill Becca, at which Tom gets off him and stands down. The female shadow that Tom thought was Karen, his wife, pounces on him and drags him away. Ethan smashes the machine just in time before Henry kills Matt. Hannah gets free, and together with Matt, they bring Becca back to the house. Ethan finds a wounded Tom downstairs and helps him to his feet. Ethan reunites with Hannah and his siblings, and they all hug. A little while later, Ethan puts up the house for sale, ready to move out and start afresh. One of the moving company's employees gives Becca's favourite doll back to her. Having learned her lesson well, Becca leaves the doll inside the house and gets in the car. Ethan nods at Tom and says goodbye to Marie before driving away. The family soon settles into their new house, feeling calm and safe. But Becca's doll has somehow made it there and is peeking out of a box.